Hi, my name is Ben Stapley, and I'm excited to be hosting a conversation about preaching and teaching during COVID and beyond. I'm excited for a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm surrounded by all star communicators. The second reason is these are church leaders, people with skin in the game. We're going to be looking at three basic questions. First of all, if you had a mulligan, if you could go back and do something over, what would it be 2 months ago? The second thing is, how has your preaching and teaching changed during COVID right now? And then the last thing is, what lessons are you learning now that you're going to continue with your preaching and teaching when we reopen? I'm going to let all these guys introduce themselves. Let's jump in with Jason.
Yeah, my name's Jason Mitchell, and I'm with LCBC Church. LCBC stands for Lives Changed by Christ, and we've got locations all across the state of Pennsylvania. And yeah, just real honored to be here with you. So I'm teaching pastor on the strategic leadership team for the church, and yeah, real privileged to be here with you.
Awesome, Jeff. What about yourself?
Yeah, Jeff Brody from Connexus Church, just north of Toronto. I'm the lead pastor here.
Awesome. And I'm Trey Van Camp. I'm out in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm a church planter. We launched our church just 4 years ago.
Awesome. Hey, friends. My name is Thomas Kang, and I'm the lead pastor of a church called New Story Church in downtown Los Angeles, about 2 miles away from the house that Kobe built.
Very nice. Very nice. So let's jump into that first question. What is something that you guys felt, if you could jump in that time machine and go back, anything it could apply to your church in general, to your leadership style, or maybe even to your preaching and teaching, that you would love to go back and change? Anyone jump on in and answer that question?
You know, I don't know about you guys, but for me, pre-pandemic, we were kind of late to the game, right? We were just on the road to progressing from a simple online presence to, where you basically, archive your messages, have an Instagram account, have a Facebook account. We were just progressing from that to an actual online ministry, right? Where we actually staff for it, where we actually resource for it, prioritize, calendar, vision cast for it. But then, of course, once this pandemic hit, it's like, baptism by fire. We got thrown into the deep end really quick. And, if I had to do it all over again, that's definitely something that, we would have jumped into that a lot quicker, because we had to learn by the fly, given the circumstances.
Yeah, I would say for us, it's definitely been a mindset shift. I mean, we've been talking about this, and I think making small incremental shifts towards probably more of an omni-channel approach to being able to, for our people to interact with our church and engage with our church in whatever ways they want to or desire to. But this definitely fast-tracked everything. And the way that we've been talking about it with our staff and try to, in some ways we've been talking in hyperbole, but it's been to kind of shock them into just rethinking things, is we used to be a church that had, 15 locations, a church of 15 locations that also had online. And we've said, now we're an online church that just happens to have some locations as well. And so again, it's a subtle, just sort of, it might sound like semantics, but it is a shift. And I feel like this has really thrown us into it. As far as preaching and teaching and communicating, if we could rewind the clock, I felt personally like, well, first of all, I hate communicating to a camera. So I love the dynamics of a room. I love the dynamics of of people in the audience. And so that is not my native language. And probably, I would imagine for most pastors and preachers and teachers, that's probably the case. And I feel like I probably overcompensated on the scripted side. And so probably, if I had to rewind the clock, I probably would say I was too scripted, even in simple things like announcements or just trying to vision small little things. It was just too scripted almost. And that's partly because I just felt very vulnerable in front of a camera. And it probably helped me not feel as vulnerable. And yet you kind of trade something from the dynamics in light of that. So that would be one thing I thought of when you were asking that.
That's good. Jason, let me push into that omni-channel. I've heard that term. I think we probably know this, but for the people listening in, what do you mean by that as you guys, LCBC, pushes to be more omni-channel focused?
Yeah, so what we mean by that is just real simple, that we don't want you to have to step foot into a physical location to be able to engage with our church. and to become a fully devoted follower of Jesus. We want as a church to be able to provide for our people environments where they can take steps in becoming a fully devoted followers of Jesus, whether that is, and let them choose what is most valuable, whether that's through online environments or through physical location environments, but letting them make those choices about what's most valuable to them instead of forcing them all. And so the whole idea of omnichannel is multiple channels, essentially, is multiple ways for people to engage with our church. And ultimately, it's not just with our church, to engage with the life of Christ.
Good. That's helpful. Trey and Jeff, what's a mulligan for you guys? What's a do-over?
Yeah, I would say so. I've been in the video world for a while now. I've uploaded like 446 videos on YouTube. So like I became the guy where people are like, what do we do? And so I was super grateful for that here in the state of Arizona, just helping some pastors, helping them get started. So even just on a personal standpoint, though, I feel like I was so all in on helping pastors that I almost kind of forsook my congregation a little bit. I think I got a little bit burnt out. Just trying to help. And it's a joy and I'm grateful for that. But if I were to do it different, I probably would have said, let's all meet at the same time so I could get this done quicker and be able to care for my family, my congregation. So that was one thing for sure. So like, I'm used to speaking to a camera again, because I've done vlogs and stuff for quite a while now. But I think if I were to go do it back, I think I should have thought more as a pastor and more of allowing this to be a moment of grief, a moment of grace. And I feel like I was such an entrepreneur in this moment and like, we're going to capitalize what, this is going to be for our betterment. And I believe that has happened, but I do think it kind of came across, I'm saying, a little less graceful than it should have been, a little bit more. I should have been more patient. I was just really excited just to keep going. And then, the last few weeks, it's really kind of caught up to me personally.
It's good. It's helpful.
That's great. For me, I would say, so we'd had online services for about 4 years prior to this, but I would agree. I know it's been mentioned. I regret probably not fully staffing for all the channels more kind of in a more robust way. So I wish I would have done that. On the practical side, on preaching, we did a lot of great pivoting, but one of the things we realized very quickly was rebroadcasting our services was not going to be the long-term way to engage people. And one of the things I would have done if I could do it sooner is we actually moved the message part of the service all the way up to the beginning, right out of the gate. And we saw our watch time go from like 14 minutes to 24 minutes overnight. And I wish we had done that sooner. I think we could see when we even talked about music, you could see the drop off begin. There were people who were saying, I'm really here for the content. And if we had done that off the top earlier on, I think we would have maintained some of the audience that we had in those early days. So that's something real practical thing I'd do a do-over on.
Good. Has that been the case for the other churches represented as well, that you guys have seen higher degrees of engagement with your content or your worship? Where are you feeling that?
Yeah, we definitely have more sustained viewership during the message. I really like what you just said there, Jeff, about having the message. So you have the message up front and the music afterwards.
Yeah. So what we did was when we were like, okay, we're doing, let's say 2 songs.
Sure.
So normally we would have rebroadcast maybe 3 songs and a message. Then we went to 2 songs and a message, and we could see the view time was still low. And then we said, what if we just try putting the message up front? And so when we did that, we saw the change. And then since then, we will do a song before the message from time to time that's more like a music video than it is worship from a platform, in order to maintain the engagement. So I would say probably for 3 weeks, we put the message right off the top.
Do you start it with like a opening spot, like of 60 seconds, and then go straight to the message?
Yeah, like we would have a live host, and then they would throw to me. And I didn't even have a bumper video or anything for the first while. Like they were just throwing to me right away. Or now we might have a bumper video off the top of 30 seconds, but jumping right in seemed to keep people for longer over the long term.
Something we recognize, we really pivoted because we're thinking of our Facebook, and a lot of times people just stumble upon it, because somebody else liked it or shared it or whatever. So what we decided to do is very much like that. I treated the first 30 seconds as a pitch, as an ad. And so I would actually take 30 seconds from the end or the middle of like a zinger of like, this is what the message is about. And it would like look like a box. You could tell it's different, and it would have a timer on the bottom. But what was important for us was the captions. So if they're scrolling past, they can immediately see what we're talking about. And it's like the crux. Like if you're not into this, you're not going to be into this whole thing. And that helped a lot of viewership, like you said. And then we just kind of jumped right into the message, and that was really helpful for us.
I think for us, we kind of went into it. Well, first of all, we all went into it not knowing, was this going to be 3 weeks or is this going to be a year or whatever. And so it was interesting because, we went to it originally saying, let's capture what we just do in a weekend and keep, like we've been doing all the church online stuff previous to that. When it became obvious after 2 or 3 weeks that this is going to be in a long haul, that's when we began to pivot a little bit. Our philosophy has probably been, it might be a little bit different because we've been trying to say, we want to capture one packaged, live, seamless experience from worship to message and all that. And in some church, and there's just 2 different approaches. And so we've seen some churches that almost treat it a little bit more like TV programming, where you'll have it and then it's obvious that a independently filmed next piece comes and then an independently filmed message. And so our approach was just a little bit different. We wanted it to feel a little bit more like you were watching you were participating in an event. And so we kept that. I mean, little simple things is just like a jib. We'll use our jib camera to go from announcements or whatever, let's just say revisioning time, to swing over instead of a cut shot. So it just shows it's all happening at the same time in the same room. And so with that, as far as the message goes, one of our biggest shifts was, honestly, we just got way shorter. So maybe that was our way at the sort of sustained viewership, as opposed to moving it where we might normally do. We're talking like 20-minute messages now. And that has felt real good to us so far. And we've just gotten a lot more predictable in that way. So,
hey, Jason, that's good. We're about 25 minutes right now. What are other people doing message lengthwise?
Oh man, I thought we were doing well. Pre-COVID, it's funny.
How long are you, Tom? Come on now.
Yeah, depends on the kind of church. How long?
No. It's here I was thinking I was so studious. I was doing my research, and before this call, I was like, hey guys, how long were our messages on the average pre-COVID? So pre-COVID, I literally have it right here. It was 44 minutes and 16 seconds. That was the average. Since the digital Pentecost, what I'm calling digital Pentecost, when we went online starting March 15th, I was like patting myself on the back, like, yeah, we got it down to 32 minutes, which is it's a 27% drop. But you guys are talking like 20, 25 minutes. I'm just like, oh man, okay. Maybe that's what we need to do. I know our people won't complain. It's always the preachers that want to preach longer, right? So
we struggled with 20. We couldn't make it go. We tried.
Wow. Yeah. And we're definitely more than that, probably that 22. We aim for 20 and we're probably more in that 22 range. Yeah.
That's amazing.
What's fascinating to me is that, how it gets like a 3,100 word message any other weekend, like before all of this, would have been that might have been a 35, 36 minute message. But 3,100 words in this format, or 3,000 words in this format, you're getting it done in 22 minutes. Now we're using a teleprompter as well. And so, and we've learned some things there. I talked about the scripted thing a moment ago, but there's even a way, I feel like there's hacks with the teleprompter where you don't have to feel scripted with that. Because you can just build in outline stuff. But my point is, it's just fascinating to me how the same amount of words would have been a 35-minute message then, and it's now a 23-minute message. So I don't really know why, but that's the case.
Jeff, let me come back to a comment you made. You said the 20-minute wasn't working for you. Was it not working for the communicator, that they couldn't communicate everything they wanted, or from the audience that they didn't feel it was robust enough, or both?
We just feel, we feel at 20 minutes, I struggle. Now we're not using the teleprompter, so that might be different, Jason, but at 20 minutes, I just struggle to really get to the level of meaning that I'm trying to get to. So other people are probably more skilled at it than I am. But if I don't have 25, and even, if you get me on my more passionate, let's be honest, it's probably a little more than that. The preacher always says it's one number. Well, it's always a little bit more. But for me, I just felt like at 20 minutes, 20 to 25 minutes, this is like a devotional, and I can't get to the level of meaning that I'm trying to get to. Probably if I was, maybe if I was a bit better, I had more reps, I could, but that was the struggle for me.
Yeah.
I
Trey,
would
you're
definitely agree.
Trey, you're the master of the short form. YouTube really. What do you do? 30 seconds? Come on. What are you at?
No, yeah. So I actually have like a whole nother so as far as the service, because we really viewed it, this is, just the Sunday morning stream is just, only one aspect of online ministry. So if we're just talking in that zone, pre-COVID it was at 33 to 35 minutes. And then now it's about 27 minutes on average. So and you realize though, like your illustrations just don't take as long. You're not like looking around. I mean, you're just kind of rolling through. I'm doing less illustrations as far as like personal stories, because I'm like, man, this thing's rambling. Let's just get to the point. So we've just kind of shaved off things here and there. But we've kind of treated it differently. Like the way we viewed Sunday morning for us was this is for our congregation. And the other videos we post throughout the week is for those who are looking, who are lost, who don't know Jesus. So we really have treated it that way. And I know our people have appreciated, I feel like I got a full, like I've been hearing all sorts of messages all week. It's really nice to feel like we fully understand this text, that you spend a lot of time on this. It was kind of, again, every congregation's different, but that's kind of what the feedback was for our church.
That's helpful. Hey, Jason, you were talking about teleprompter before. Have you found any hacks for yourself to use? Well, one of the ones that we had to give to one of our communicators who was a little stiff was they'd never done it before. We finally said, who's someone that's close to your heart, but who's far from God's heart, that they don't know God yet. And they told us about the person was. And as we were doing this, someone found the person on Facebook, printed off their photo, came and taped it underneath the camera. And they said, don't talk to the camera, talk to them right underneath.
That's good.
And it completely changed way our communicators. And whenever we're doing that now with teleprompter, we have a couple of those family photos around. Have you any of you guys found any of those other hacks to make, even though you're just looking at a piece of gear, to make it feel as authentic and human as possible?
One of the things I've done in the past is I've actually had some of our staff just sit by the camera, and it's kind of the same principle. And I love that principle, and hope every communicator is thinking that through, regardless of pre-COVID or COVID messages. And I love that, Ben. But I also like seeing heads nod. I just like knowing it's actually making sense. And so I have had staff before just, hey, can you just sit, like two of them, can you just sit near the camera? And even if I just see you doing this, I'll know it's resonating. That's part of why you feel so vulnerable to a camera. I feel like it's like, I don't know if this is tracking right now. And so I think it's the same principle you're getting at a little bit, Ben. I mean, you're talking about a little bit the heart engagement, and I might be talking about a little bit more like it's actually making sense. But I think that same hack is at work there.
Yeah, I've definitely always visualized like one person from my church, or when I vlog, I think about who needs to hear this. And when I look at the lens, like I'm looking at that person. That helps a lot. We always talk about how personal is more powerful than professional. Every time in video, personal always comes across best. And I think that's why people have leaned into using their iPhones and all that, just different ways to make it personal. We haven't gone that far. We enjoyed the nice cameras we have, but making it personal really does go a long way and keeps people engaged.
Trey, for the people who are listening, who are hearing that principle for the first time, and this is helpful, who is it in your mind? Is it the most pagan person that you friend of yours who's really far from God? Someone in the middle? How are you trying to do that and split that difference?
Someone in your family? Are you pitching someone in your family? Maybe? No, I'm just kidding.
Man, that's interesting. I guess I would say I'm always thinking about the fringe, the person who is a new follower of Jesus. I guess a lot of times too, the passage kind of dictates itself that way too. So I try to think about it that way. But yeah, it's usually someone who's like, convince me, or like someone where I really do feel the pain. Like they need this. And so it does make me more passionate about it. It's less lecture when it's like, no, this is life and death on the line.
Yeah, I tend to think about it a lot more as if I definitely think through the lens of someone. I mean, my heart, I'm sure you guys probably, I will always bleed most for the one who doesn't know Jesus. I mean, so I'm just bent that way probably. And so I'm always going to be thinking about their objections. And so I'm thinking about someone on the fringe, like Trey was just mentioned. But I found that my heart probably most engages when I just know someone who's going through the exact thing, whatever we're talking about most. And so even if that's someone who's been following Jesus for years, but they lost a spouse recently, and we're talking about grief,
that's good.
At that point, it doesn't have to be a skeptic. I'm thinking about that person, and that's going to engage my emotions and my heart probably in a different kind of way.
we talked about duration, and we talked about audience. Are there other ways in which you guys have pivoted in terms of who you not just how you're communicating to the camera, but how you envision that audience? I guess one of the things we wrestle through initially is that we've encouraged a lot of staff to share the content because it's online, it's very shareable. And some of staff said some of our communication is pretty insidery. I wouldn't want to communicate this and share it on my Facebook page because it's just going to come off as tone deaf. And that came back to our teaching team, and our teaching team said, "Man, we should probably wrestle through how we're communicating." Is anyone wrestling that through as well? The not just who you're communicating to, but like really the tone of the content as well.
So I go back and forth on this one, and here's what I go back and forth on. I do not want to be insider at all. I want to talk in a way. I always want to know the objections that a skeptic or that someone who's, I know every weekend. I mean, we know this, that someone is taking a risk and they're bringing their brother-in-law for the first time, or they're bringing someone, their husband, for the first time. And I always want to have that person in mind. At the same time, so here's my wrestle. At the same time, I feel like so this is more, I'm probably diving into something here, maybe even just philosophy, but I feel like when Paul in the letters and the epistles, I just don't see him a ton saying, okay, right now I'm going to talk to this group. Right now I'm going to talk to this group. I just see him going, this is what it looks like to follow Jesus. And we know that he assumed there were outsiders in the midst because of 1 Corinthians 14. And so he knows that there's outsiders in the midst. That's when he says, don't talk in tongues and sound stupid when you're talking in front of people who don't like, be mindful, not don't talk in tongues, but be mindful when you've got people, outsiders in the room. So he knows that, and yet he just keeps saying, but this is what it means to follow Jesus. This is what it means to follow Jesus. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a part of me that feels like if we talk passionately about what it means to have life in Jesus, that will be attractive, and that will be, it might be offensive, but it will be compelling. Maybe not attractive, but it'll be compelling. And so the most compelling content is the content that is most transformative. And if that's done in a way that makes sense, which I think is the bottom line, it has to make sense. To me, that's shareable because it's compelling content and it's helpful. So I always feel torn. I wrestle with this. And one day you'll catch me and I'll probably be like, no, it's all about that. And the next day I'll be like, who cares? Just do this. So I'm schizophrenic with this a little bit, but.
That's good. Jeff or Tom or Trey, you go for it.
Yeah, sorry. I was reading Acts 19 the other day, and I thought it was really compelling. In verse 8, it talks about how Paul he was just entering into Ephesus, right? And he was in the synagogue, where the most public place, and he was trying to persuade people about the kingdom of God over a period of 3 months, which really hit me home because it was about 3 months since we've been doing this, right? And it's funny, though, because in verse 9, many people became hardened and would not believe, slandering the way in front of the crowd. He withdrew from them, took his disciples, and conducted discussions every day in the lecture hall. And it was all about, and then it says in verse 10, this went on for 2 years, and all the residents of Asia, both Jews and Greeks, heard the word of the Lord. So a big pivot we've made. How can we better empower our people throughout the week, not to share my message, but to share their message? And so our biggest pivot is the practices of Jesus. How are you putting it into place? And then you have your own story to share. So that's been really helpful for us. I've kind of realized I'm not as good of a communicator as I thought I was. Like, this has been so humbling every week just to watch myself on the screen. I'm like, if this is our hope, we're not going very far. But we realized, like, I would, instead of like, woe to me if I just preach hope, but I don't also teach habits. So we've been trying to instill in our church a rule of life. And so in the month of May, we did 21-day practice, where it was 3 daily habits and 3 weekly practices. And that has seemed to be the most transformative, like you just said, transformative for our people. They're kind of owning their own faith, and it's empowered them just to share what God has done in their own life.
Yeah, I think for me, in the midst of COVID, online has been, being online has been transformational for personal friends and family who are watching our services online, who've connected with Christ for the first time. And it's kind of part of our story. So that's really helped over the last few years in helping me shape what I'm communicating, how I'm communicating, and making sure it's speaking to those who are unchurched, because we've got friends that, I moved here 11 years ago away from family, and God's written a story of redemption in the lives of many of those friends and family as a result of watching online. So for me, that's been a big part of the motivation in thinking about, my preparation and who we're trying to reach.
That's good. Tom, for you, has your target audience changed during the season because of how more online you are?
Yeah, it absolutely has because, when you're preaching inside of a room to your people, I mean, you see your people, you know your people, you can talk to them afterwards, you can talk to them before. Since going online, we knew, as I was sharing earlier, we had a presence, so our messages and stuff were archived. So we see people, or we get the occasional email from, here we are based in LA, but we get the email from Philly, for instance, Philadelphia, hey, saw this on. So that was great and all, but now that we have this online ministry, it's going live, right? People are in the chat box, hey, I'm here from India. What in the world? Ireland, what? Like, and so that's kind of making us think, oh, this thing is going beyond our little LA county, even beyond California, even beyond our country, right? It's going to people in Ireland. Like, we actually have this big following in India, which is like, I've never thought about that. We all know, okay, we need to take the gospel, to all the nations and things like that, but that's really brought it in the forefront. It's really in front of us in a very real way for the first time. So now we're thinking, so like, even in our, we'll have like this welcome trailer. So we've asked these India, hey, would you send us hello from India, New Story Church, that kind of a thing, and we're trying to incorporate them more in, whereas we never thought that before. So that's changed this significantly.
Hey, I have a question for you guys. Ben, can I ask a quick question? Yeah. I'm interested in how you guys have, what your take on this is. It's interesting because, when it comes to our audience and maybe what their felt needs are, have you guys been making the assumption since the COVID season that people are more open or spiritually sensitive in the season, or maybe having questions, and has that changed your approach? And then I guess the other thing is, and you can tell me, feel free to say I've been thinking about this wrong, but I've also wondered if when we're in our buildings, I'm kind of assuming there's people there who do not want to be there. And they're there because they were shamed into being there by their wife, or whatever, or they were dragged by their parent, or whatever it might be. I don't know. Online, I don't know if I've been making that assumption, because I've always just felt like if you're not wanting to be there, you're not clicking the button, and so that's shifted a little bit, kind of my assumptions as well. And I don't know if those are good assumptions to make, but have those thoughts gone through your heads at all? And what's your take on all that?
Yeah, absolutely. That first one that you mentioned there, Jason, this is such a unique time for all of us, and the hot phrase unprecedented. But we have really been seeing an open-heartedness to the gospel, an open-heartedness to spiritual discussion, conversation. Where is God? Is he allowing this to happen? Is he good? Et cetera, et cetera. So we definitely have been seeing that in our chats, in emails, and people reaching out to us. Like I said, that viewership going up and up every week. That's been really encouraging, really exciting. It's also overwhelming because we're like, oh my gosh, like, this is exactly what the church is supposed to be doing. This is exactly what you pray for. But it's kind of like, Trey, you were mentioning, and I'm like this too. I'm like, oh man, I am not as good a communicator as I thought. Well, not only that, but added to that, we are not as great of a church as I thought, and so that's been a very humbling thing. And the second part that you mentioned there, about people, they can it's much easier to click on or off than it is to be dragged into a building. And so that dynamic that is something that I've been thinking a lot about. Like, if I'm a non-believer, or if I'm with my girlfriend, whatever, she wants to watch, well, then I'll just go in the next room and do whatever, and so that ease, that accessibility of choosing to watch or choosing not to watch, yeah, that's definitely a real factor.
That's something I'm totally with you, same page. And that's why we've thought about what are other videos we can create that gains the trust and the authority to where they can then come and listen to those full messages. So one pivot that we did, again, I know that's kind of unique to my situation because I guess I'm crazy enough to do it, but I've been vlogging different parts of my life for 3 years now. So it's kind of normal. I was like, okay, how do I vlog this? And so what I started doing is these weekly vlogs. So it's just 2 to 5 minutes per day. And it kind of all weaves together. And it really helped twofold. One, it helped show our church. I feel like the vision's still been on the same page. Like I'm wrestling on the video. Like, here's what we're dealing with. Do we do Facebook ads? Here, I'll show you. We're going to make a Facebook ad right now. Oh, this person, I'm like kind of really opening the door and showing here's us trying to figure out as a church plant. We're nowhere near as big as the rest of you guys, but we're just a little church plant trying to figure out how to make this thing not only survive, but thrive. And so it's really helped, I think, gain some authority and trust from our church folks. But I think the honesty and the rawness of non-believers, they've kind of like, I wonder, oh, this pastor, how is he dealing with this? And so I've really had a lot of Instagram DM conversations from those YouTube videos that have led to more relationships and them watching longer. So like finding different ways to gain that trust and be vulnerable, not just on a Sunday morning experience, has been really, really helpful for us.
Yeah, this is a great conversation. There's so much to learn here. I agree with you, Jason, on people coming to see, like, this is, I'm coming here because I want to be here. And often that can be related to usually the topic, an invitation to the topic. I saw a Facebook ad, I saw a Google ad. Again, part of the motivation for, and now I'm thinking maybe we need to even push this further, but part of the motivation for putting the sermon up front, I didn't come to the service for 3 songs I don't know before I can get to the actual content I wanted. And when I'm speaking, they're really pushing me, like, they're really pushing our host to think like a streamer because that's live, and then our preaching to think like a YouTuber. And so I've been watching YouTube videos, and it's awkward for me. Like, I start by saying, I cut all of the recap off. There's no recap of the previous week. And it's, hey, we're jumping in. This is what we're talking about. These are the 2 things I'm going to talk about. And you're going to want to stay until the end because we're going to have X. It's like every Minecraft YouTube video my kids have ever watched, right? Like, and it's trying to get in that man. And it's not natural for me. Like, I'm not a YouTuber. It's not natural for me to think that way, but the team has pushed me to try to think that way around the messages, thinking, hey, you came here to hear this. We're on social media, on Google ads, on Facebook ads. We're not promoting our worship. But when you arrive, if that's the first thing you see, you're like, this isn't really what I was looking for. So we're going to be online here in the Toronto area for probably a long time only. We probably won't be in our buildings for a long time, but it does make me really rethink, what the experience is going to be like. Are we even going to rebroadcast our services, or is there going to be a different kind of custom service? I don't know. I've got a lot of questions that way, but Jason, I think you're really onto something there. Like, it's different than I came to do my mom a favor on Mother's Day. I'm there because I want to be here.
Good. Let me push into this question, and it's umbrella of grace. I haven't thought it through fully, so I'm thinking out loud here. But I know that all of us have a degree of reach. Us here in the conversation, or the people listening. It could be a community, it could be a city, it could be a state. But at some point, our reach reaches a border, and we have our audience roughly in a border. Have you guys been wrestling through, now that everyone's exclusively online, and it's so easy for your congregation to go to your church or another church that is bigger, has better production value, more bells and whistles, a preacher they may like their style better. Have you been leaning into that tension and saying, man, we should probably leverage the content the content that only we can give to our people, and the stuff that's maybe a little more contextual for people based upon our community or city or state? Have you guys wrestled that through, that tension, and how are you responding to it? Or just, hey, that's the world we live in, that's the world we lived in before, it's just more now, and we're just going to keep doing our thing?
Well, I'll start because I don't have the answer. So I'll start with just more questions. But for sure, if you want to talk about do-overs, this is something like we're wrestling with in real time. So, like Tom shared, you get people coming you got a person from England who's now a part of a small group, and a person from Brazil who's now part of a small group, and that's great. But is this the plan from a resource standpoint to say, hey, how do we reach everybody globally? And from a resource standpoint, how effective can we be in that way? If long-term you're going to invest in some kind of digital marketing, if you're going to invest in, and because your influence, it gets more shallow as you get further away from your geographic location, in our case. And so those are the questions we're trying to figure out is, should we be, so I'll give you an example. Right away, we had a Service of Hope the first week. We did Facebook, a Facebook sponsorship post, like sponsored posts across the country, like join us for a Service of Hope. It was great. But over time, you see the influence goes back to the people who are inviting people, the people who are connected with people. And we are asking the question, even to evaluate it from a resource standpoint, what is a geographical area we're actually better positioned to reach? And is global actually going to end up being a distraction for us? So that's sort of that's, if you want to think about, if you want an example of the kind of things we're talking about, I don't have the answer, but that is what we're trying to figure out.
That's good.
Yeah, we've been focusing on local, just kind of where we're at in our ministry anyway. So all of our dollars we put on YouTube and Facebook, which YouTube has produced way more for us than Facebook. And I think it's kind of my demographic.
Same here.
So we just been targeting 5-mile radius from where we meet. And that's helped a lot. The YouTube game, I used to just hope somebody would find us. Then they randomly would hopefully be from my city. It's like, wait, that's what ads are for. So we just been making really strategic 15-second ads, because those are the ones on YouTube you can't skip. So you can get a whole message done real quick in 15 seconds. And a lot of times it's not even a call to action. It's just a gift or a blessing, or we're caring for you or whatever. And then just kind of getting in their face more and more has been helpful for us.
Hey, on the back end, we got about 10 minutes left of our conversation. And so we're talking about things that we've learned and adjustments we wish we had have done or that we are doing. Let's look down the road. When you reopen your doors, what are these lessons now that you've been exclusively online have you learned? It's like, that's a keeper. We cannot go back. We're not going back to that 50-minute message. We're not going back to whatever it might be. I'd love to know what you guys have learned now that's going to be future proof that you're applying down the road.
We're going back to longer messages. You better believe that. No. I don't know the answer. I mean, I could tell you some things we're talking about. I can tell you we're gonna continue to do our online, whatever we end up distributing online, we're gonna be talking to online. We're not just going to show what we did in a room and hope you make sense of it online. So that's gonna happen. I think now we just got to figure out how we do that. And we're talking about, do we create one of our gatherings to be a studio audience gathering? It gives people an opportunity to come, but they just know this gathering you're coming to is for online, but you can still be a part of it. And so we're talking about that. We've talked about a pseudo studio, but just kind of recreating what we do on the stage as a pseudo studio. We're going to continue. I'm just reading some notes that I wrote down as you were asking that, but we're going to continue just capturing that seamless experience. I think that's going to be something we're going to continue to do as we move forward. But I think the bottom line for us is we love, it's been a shift for us, not just capturing what we did in a room that was for that room, but capturing what we did in a room that was for the online audience. And I know that's subtle, but it's felt very different to us when you're looking right at the camera, right into someone's living room, as opposed to looking at the crowd, and they know they're not there. So those are the little things that I know we're going to continue on. We just got to figure out how to do them moving forward.
Yeah, churches are investing in a lot of tally lights as we speak. Look at the camera. Look at the camera. What about you, Tom?
Yeah, I was going to say that for us, I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty rigid when it comes to the preaching calendar, right? So you kind of plan out the whole year, you go by the seasons. I wouldn't say liturgical, but okay, well, you got your Christmas series, you got your New Year's series, you got, Father's Day is coming up, that whole thing. And we're pretty rigid with it. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but this whole thing I mean, our preaching calendar totally went out the window, right? Everything's changed. And I think part of that really our church appreciates, right? Because what that allows us to do now is be so relevant in terms of what's going on in the world and our culture and whatnot. And so, like, you know, here's just an example. I mean, this Sunday we were supposed to, you know, according to our preaching calendar, we had a series on Habakkuk, right? Okay, great. But instead, we just made the decision yesterday, called an audible, and said, oh, no, we're going to do a series on racial reconciliation. Let's call it Change. And so that was just done on the fly. Whereas before all this, before the pandemic, yeah, there you would have things that would pop up, and maybe we would have or afford a little bit of flexibility, but we would be very skittish about it. And maybe you were allowed one audible a year. Now it's like, no, we're pretty open to whatever's happening and to meet that immediate need. Now that doesn't say that we're not prayerful about it, or we don't think through it, or we're not afraid of, you know, shelving it maybe for, you know, a couple weeks down the road or whatever. But we definitely are more flexible than we ever were.
Same.
It's good. Trey or Jeff, any future proofing that you guys are doing, lessons learned that you're going to apply down the road?
Yeah, I'll go. I think we're really leaning into more storytelling. I think that's what's really helpful. I think right now there's so many experts right now. And so what we want to be is, like, by sharing it in story format, it's less about being an expert for them, but experiencing the truth with them and kind of just discovering things together. And so it's been able to really just bring the truth to people that would otherwise just kind of fend it off. And then also, like, even practical things, like I think we'll do like some hybrid growth group things for us. Because for some groups, man, they have loved the Zoom. Parents with kids, it's just so nice for them just to keep the kids at their house and settled. And so we're going to kind of lean in and just figure out, okay, what works best. Maybe it's every other, just different stuff like that. And then another thing that's really been a blessing to our congregation, on Tuesday mornings, I go live on YouTube, and we just pick a passage in scripture and we just pray together for 30 minutes. And I have a little timer. Okay, now pray this truth for a minute and a half, and music goes on. And then I go back to the text and explain a little bit more, pray for this truth the next minute and a half. And so that starts at 7 a.m. every Tuesday. And people have said that's just been so life-giving for them. So we're thinking, well, when this goes back to normal, I think we'll probably pick up that pace. Maybe not every Tuesday, but still make it a consistent channel for us, you know, a source of, you know, encouragement for our people.
Trade a quick question, like, for you on your social stuff, like, what would you say is the percentage increase during COVID versus pre-COVID? Like, I mean, it sounds like you were online social media wise a fair bit. Did you up what you were doing, scrap what you were doing, and do something new? Like, what was your thought there?
Yeah, I changed a little bit of things. Like, I used to vlog like 3 days a week, and then that was just too much with everything going on, like 3 types of videos per week. So we went down to 2, and I'm still kind of experimenting different things. But the viewership did go up. I think pastors watching went up too, though, because they're like, you know, I went kind of the angle of, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this as a church? So a lot of pastors have been reaching out. So, you know, it's not quote unquote reaching lost people like I'd like for certain videos. But yeah, I usually make like one video where it's a conversation with somebody about the topic of the week, which right now, you know, I know it's more than just a topic of the week, but I'm going to have a conversation about racial reconciliation. So we have like a podcast interview format on Thursdays. And then the Tuesday one's more like a vlog. How did Sunday go? Kind of experiencing things together, if that makes sense. So I always kind of, it's like, you know, ABC has different shows within their network. So that's kind of how we've been doing it. On Tuesdays, we do this kind, Sundays, Thursdays. So yeah, it's gone up. Yeah.
That's
awesome.
Interesting.
One of the things for us, I know one of the pivots that we did was we probably took a stance that was a lot more authoritative. And when we moved to exclusively online, we became a lot more authentic. This is how I'm personally struggling during COVID. You know, not just that you're struggling, I'm struggling as well. I'm in these trenches with you guys, and our people really responded to that. And it's for us, that was the, hey man, we can't let this go. We can't. We need to hold both of these things. We need to hold the authority of God's word, but also authentically wrestle through how we're processing these passages. And He's still working out His salvation in us. And I'm completely frustrated of how to be a stay-at-home parent and a teaching parent and a work at the
Right.
same time. And my anger level's gone through the roof. Well, God wants to redeem that. And that's one of the stances that we've done that our people have responded to, and we know we can't let that go. I'm sure some of you guys have already been there, but for us, and I'm sure some of the people listening, you've experienced that. I'd encourage other people to hold on to that because people desperately need that authenticity as well. Hey, I'm going to wrap up in a second. Anyone, is there any gold nugget that you guys are holding on to that you have not released to end this off in a high note?
I came to take the gold nuggets, not to give them. I'm just kidding.
Exactly. Now I'm the same way.
Well, that is great. Thank you guys for jumping in and being a part of this. Hopefully it was value add to you. You learned. And most importantly, I know it's going to be value add for the people listening. So thank you for sharing vulnerably and authentically with the people so that we can all continue to reach the people God's called us to. Thank you so much for your time. So that was my conversation with some all-star communicators. Again, we talked about 3 things. If you could go back in time, what would you do differently during COVID? How are you preaching and teaching differently right now? And then how will you preach and teach differently when you reopen your doors? But here's the deal. We only scratched the surface. I'm sure there's tons of stuff we missed. So jump into the comments. Let me know what you are doing differently now and what you will continue to do differently down the road. My desire is to help more people find and follow Jesus. Hopefully this was value add and accomplish that. Have yourself an awesome day.